Now, a Local 24 News special, the inauguration of the Tennessee governor. Here are your hosts, Richard Ransom and Otis Sanford.
Good morning, everyone. Today, Republican Bill Lee officially becomes the 50th governor of the state of Tennessee. We're going to show you a live look inside the War Memorial Auditorium in downtown Nashville this morning. It is a packed arena, lots of folks there. They had to do this at the last minute because of the weather and move the event inside. It's not the first time that the War Memorial has hosted an inauguration, I'm told, but it is this time. They've had to change the venue, Otis.
Well, absolutely, and the weather did play a role in that, but I don't think it will be any less pageantry. I don't think it will be any less historic, Richard. This is a historic day for Bill Lee, becoming the 50th governor of the state of Tennessee and the first Republican governor to succeed another Republican since 1869. You have to go back that far. So it is a historic day for him, his family, and for the state. So
as you look at the podium there, they're showing, they just introduced outgoing Governor Bill Haslam and his wife Chrissy. They want to make a few remarks about his tenure there is 8 years as governor. Chrissy, of course, a native of this side of the state. Right. And many say that one of the reasons Governor Haslam paid as much attention to this side of the state as he did is his wife was constantly interjected there and saying,
well, I don't think there's any question about it. And he made that point when he first ran back in 2010. Bill Haslam has some huge shoes to fill here, Richard. Bill Lee has some huge shoes to fill. Because Bill Haslam has been a very popular governor, and he was well liked on this side of the state.
He's just being introduced now, as you see. Go ahead.
And it will be interesting, and everybody's going to be watching to see how Bill Lee replaces Bill Haslam and continues that unification that Haslam tried to do for his entire 8 years in office.
There's quite a crowd there, and a lot of Shelby County and West Tennessee represented. We've seen County Mayor Lee Harris. We know Mayor Jim Strickland is there. Most, if not all, the Shelby County delegation, as far as I know, David Kustoff is there. Both incoming and outgoing senators, and we also saw former Governor Phil Bredesen there too.
Right. Well, this is a day when politics really should be put aside, Richard. So you will see bipartisan applause. You will see bipartisan ovations. Hopefully, you won't see all that much bipartisan, partisan speeches going on during the event.
We're not going to see many in the way of speeches, to be honest. We've been able to get a preview of what we're in store for here in the next hour or so. And honestly, there's not a lot of pomp and circumstance planned. Right. It's a lot of it's very procedural. Right. We're not going to hear a lot of music sung because this is just the way it's done, apparently.
Well, yes, and Bill Lee is planning in a relatively short inauguration speech to try to strike a unified chord here. Again, try to leave partisan politics out of it as much as possible, and talk about all the things that unite us rather than divide us, and what a great state we are in and how honored he is to be leading it for at least the next 4 years.
All right, we're going to pause here as we have the presentation of the colors and the Pledge of Allegiance.
We will now be led in the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag by Adam DeQuan Smith. Mr. Smith, you're recognized.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. To honor America with the singing of the national anthem, please welcome Daley and Vincent.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the red and the rockets red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave.
We,
Okay, that was the presentation of the colors and, of course, the Star-Spangled Banner, Pledge of Allegiance. And now we're getting ready to hear from soon-to-be former Governor Bill Haslam. He's expected to make some remarks. Otis, they're way ahead of schedule. This wasn't supposed to happen until 11:53, and here we are, 11:37. So, this is, chop chop. We're getting through this pretty quickly.
Well, you have to hope that this is the way Bill Lee is going to run his administration, very punctual and very on time. We'll have to wait and see. That was a very interesting rendition of Star-Spangled Banner, almost like a barbershop quartet there. It was very moving.
Very nicely done. The invocation.
Tennessee that we love and are privileged to live in. We're grateful that in the founding and forming of these United States that you have been recognized and revered. From the Mayflower Compact of 1620 to the Declaration of Independence of 1776 to the Constitution and Bill of Rights of 1791 to the Tennessee State Constitution of 1870, you have been justly acknowledged and honored. Our framers credited you with being our creator and the giver of the unalienable rights and blessings that we enjoy. President Lincoln rightly declared that we have been the recipients of your choicest blessings. It would benefit us to confess, however, that we have not always responded to your blessing appropriately. We have sinned against you and one another. For our sins, we genuinely beseech your forgiveness to cleanse us and your power to grace us so that we don't repeat our shortcomings. Now, we pray for your servant, Governor-elect Bill Lee, and First Lady-designate Maria Lee. Almighty God, strengthen and inspire their existing commitment and devotion to you. Lord, bless and protect their marriage and their family. Father, anoint Bill with the knowledge of what's right, the wisdom to execute it, and the courage to complete it, regardless of the cost. May your word, will, and ways direct them as they navigate the often turbulent and unrelenting waters of political life. Be their encouragement in tough times, their humility in victorious times, and their focus at all times. Father, we know your word says that when the righteous are in authority, the people rejoice. We pray, therefore, for a generous outpouring of righteousness and rejoicing from Johnson City to Memphis and all points in between for all Tennesseans. Now, respecting people of all faiths or no faith, I humbly submit this prayer to you, Father, in the name of Jesus, who taught us to pray together, Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread. Forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom and the power and the glory forever. Amen.
Thank you, Pastor Berger. It's my honor to present to you a dedicated public servant who always puts the state of Tennessee above himself, a man who makes sure that prosperity is shared throughout the state and across all grand divisions, a man who will leave state government better than he found it. Fellow Tennesseans, the Honorable Bill Haslam, Governor of the state of Tennessee.
All right, Bill Haslam takes the podium here. It's worth noting that several former governors are at the auditorium right now. 91-year-old Winfield Dunn, Lamar Alexander, Don Sundquist, and Philip Edison, all in attendance today.
Thank you.
But none more popular than Bill Haslam.
Thank you. Please have a seat.
He's going out with a 68% approval rating, according to the last Vanderbilt
Let me
poll.
start by thanking someone who has served this state amazingly well for the last 8 years in more ways than I can tell you. Please help me thank the wonderful Chrissy Haslam. So in about 2 hours, Chrissy and I are going to be getting in a car and heading east on I-40. Two things to know about that. Number one, I haven't driven in 8 years. So if you happen to be going to Knoxville or Johnson City or Bristol somewhere, you might want to get a head start on us. The second thing to know is this, and I will try not to choke up when I say this, but there won't be two more grateful people anywhere than the two in that car. For the last 8 years, we have loved every bit of doing this, and I can't thank you enough. Every day, I have walked up to the steps to the Capitol and thought, as David says to God in 2 Samuel, "Who am I, Lord, and who is my house that you have brought me here?" I felt that every day that I got to do this job, and I always will. So to the people of Tennessee, know I am forever grateful. This is a great state. For every one person that takes a cheap shot on social media, there's 100 that send encouraging, thoughtful notes. For every one that seems to live a life that's just about themselves, there's 100 that rush to help when there's a tornado or a wildfire, military is deployed, or school children are in a bus wreck, or whatever it is. There's 100 that respond for every one that disappoints you. Three things I'd like to say, and then I'm going to sit down and we are going to get about inaugurating a great man. The first is this. One of my favorite quotes is by Justice Oliver Wendell Holmes. He said, "This is the mighty joy in life, to be a force for good, instead of a selfish, feverish clod of ailments, complaining that the world won't make you happy." You know, there's a lot of discussion going on about all the change in Tennessee. We have, a new governor, a lot of new legislators, and new leadership. And the question always becomes, well, who's got the power now? What's going to happen? Who's going to hold the reins of power? I hope the question becomes, who's going to seek good the most? and who is going to serve the best. Because this is a great state that we are honored to live in and that we are called to serve. The second point I would make is this: Tennessee will lead. If we're a state that can become the fastest improving state in the country for K-12 education results, the first state to figure out how to give everybody 2 years free of community college or technical school, a state that can have a GDP that rises faster than any of our neighbors, and a state that can figure out how to have low taxes and low debt and still provide for our most vulnerable citizens, then we can lead. Governor Lee, you're going to find something. All these great folks that you've hired are going to be incredibly loyal to you. When you're right, they're going to be really loyal to you, and when you're not right, they're still going to be loyal to you. During the campaign, when somebody would say something about Tennessee can do this better, we can do this, our folks would get all offended, like, I can't believe it. Let them come try it, and we'll see how they do. But you know what? They're right. And so when Governor Lee talked through the campaign about Tennessee can better, he was dead right, and we can be. Governor Bredesen told me, hopefully you remember this, about his last day in office. I said, any last piece of advice? He said, it's this: we don't expect enough of ourselves. We can believe in better. And that has been Governor Lee's message, and it is so true. So work with Governor Lee to believe in better and be the kind of state that Tennessee really can be. And that leaves me to the last thing I would like to say about who you have elected governor. Way to go, Tennessee. Way to go. Mark my words, Bill Lee will be a great governor. 8 years, not 4 years, 8 years from now. We will be paying tribute to the great job. You go, well, how do you know that? He hasn't done the job. Well, I know that because I've seen him. I've seen him hire a great team of people. And to all of you who are joining the Lee administration, you're coming to work with a great group of people. I've already seen him recruit business to Tennessee. I've already seen him begin to wrestle and understand the budget. But even more than that, I've seen the courage of his convictions, whether it be through a campaign or just living life. Bill has faced some of the hardest things that life can handle, and he came up not feeling sorry for himself and having a pity party, but saying, how can I serve? So Bill, Godspeed, my brother. Chrissy and I woke up and did what thousands of other Tennesseans did this morning before we came here. We woke up and prayed for you and Maria. We will be praying for you and cheering for you. We're grateful to have, you don't get to pick your successor in this job, but I can't think of anybody else that we are more excited to turn over the keys to this wonderful state that we love and call home. Thank you so much for allowing us to do this.
All right, those are remarks from Governor Bill Haslam as the two outgoing and incoming governor give each other a hug. What did you think of the remarks from Governor Haslam, Otis?
Oh, I thought it was very gracious, Richard. I mean, he was punctual, first of all. He was right to the point. He made 3 solid points about the state of Tennessee, but he ended it on a high note, talking about how Tennessee has elected an outstanding man to be governor of this state. It's typical Bill Haslam. He's a very gracious man. He's a very humble guy. He knows how to give the congratulations when they're necessary. Mm-hmm. He did a fabulous job.
You know, he made point to make mention of what I would say is something that will be his enduring legacy, and that is a free community college education for every citizen in the state of Tennessee.
Right.
I don't know if it's still the case, but for when that happened and for the longest time since, we have been the only state in the union to offer that. I mean, it's truly incredible.
Well, a lot of governors, including Phil Bredesen and even Don Sonquist, tried to be an education governor, but Bill Haslam succeeded in being an education governor. Not just K through 12.
Except for TN Ready, perhaps.
Well, except for TN Ready, yeah.
Anyway,
we have to mention that. I mean, that was a debacle that they're still trying to work out. But in terms of the in-the-classroom education and in terms of access to education, K through 12 and higher education. Remember now, under Haslam, all the state universities got their own separate boards, which is helping them to chart their own course without it being a cookie-cutter approach.
And as a U of M professor, that you can speak firsthand about what that has meant for the university.
It has been a tremendous positive impact for the university where I work at. Absolutely.
That's great. So I don't know if we're killing a little time here or not, because typically, historically, the swearing in happens right at noon. And we're obviously a little bit ahead of time, as we mentioned earlier. It's 11:50 now, so there may be some music here after all,
right?
As we lead up to noon. In fact, this might be a good point. If back in the booth, if you don't mind, let's talk about how we got to this point. Governor Bill Lee started as an unlikely candidate, and here he is about to be sworn in.
I thank my Father God, who has blessed me in more ways than I could ever have imagined.
It was an improbable journey for Bill Lee when in April of 2017 he announced he had his eyes set on the Tennessee governor's mansion.
I've got an election to win before we start making decisions.
He was the least known of the Republicans running.
I'm committed to folks hearing from me from the very beginning to the very end of this campaign. That's why we're doing this town hall tour.
There was Randy Boyd, a wealthy outsider businessman who'd hired a number of well-known campaign strategists. Diane Black, another multi-millionaire with 16 years as a congresswoman. She was tough and had her own group of experienced staffers ready to fight. House Speaker Beth Harwell was one of the most powerful politicians in Tennessee, well-respected and a proven conservative. And Bill Lee, he had a successful HVAC company and a ranch with 300 head of cattle. But what else?
We learned then, and I still believe it's true now, people want a good job, good school for their kid, safe neighborhood.
He told everyone about his life journey, the tragic death of his first wife, about his faith, and that he was the true conservative outsider. But it wasn't until a year after his announcement at Local 24's first statewide televised debate from the Holleran Center downtown when Lee really started getting noticed. He knew the issues, had a TV presence, and was clearly comfortable sharing the stage with his more well-known competitors. Mr. Lee, a question to you now. Shelby County has 14% of the population of Tennessee and is getting 4% of the funding for new roads.
They've also gotten about 1/3 of the economic incentive funding over the same period of time. They've created about 1/10 the jobs that have been created in Middle Tennessee. There's no doubt that the focus that has not been put here that needs to be put.
In a room full of Chamber of Commerce types, that made an impression. There would be one more statewide debate before the primary, and by then the Republicans who had fallen over each other being nice turned very ugly. The ads were as negative as they could be.
My opponents are fighting over what I've already done as your Tennessee Speaker.
Except for Lee, who refused to follow Boyd and Black by going negative.
I think negative, deceitful attack ads, it's everything wrong with politics. I'm not going down that road because it's not what leaders do.
By the primary in August, Lee had spent $5 million of his own money. Black had spent $13 million and Boyd $19 million. But Lee won easily. And from then until November, it was a gentleman's campaign. Deep Red Tennessee knew Democrat Carl Dean was a moderate and successful businessman, but there wasn't much for Dean to attack about Lee, and a lot for Tennessee voters to like. The race was called for Lee before polls in Shelby County had even closed.
God bless the great state of Tennessee. Thank you.
And that was interesting as the campaign went on, Otis. Time and time again, even when he wasn't in West Tennessee, he talked about the importance of Shelby County and his determination to not forget about our need for infrastructure, our need to attract jobs.
Right, absolutely, Richard. Bill Lee ran a textbook campaign here in an era when you think that negative politics is the one that would come through. He ran a positive campaign. He distinguished himself from his Republican opponents who went negative and stayed negative, and he emerged basically out of nowhere to win. This is a guy who had not had any experience, not any direct experience in politics in his career. He may have served on some commission or something, but in terms of actively involved in politics, either in an elected office or working in campaigns like all the other governors for the last 50, 60 years had done, he did not do that, and we see what happened. He won in a landslide. It was probably one of the most impressive political campaigns I've ever watched, and I've been watching politics for 50 years.
Well, you know, the dichotomy, I guess, of you had the Senate race going on at the same time as the governor's race in Tennessee, two statewide races, and the negativity that we all saw in the Senate campaign, and how and it was really a decision by both men, I think, to rise above it and not go terribly negative.
Well, and your point in the piece was well taken. Carl Dean could not find anything to go negative on Bill Lee on. I mean, he was a clean-cut guy. He had run a successful business. The only thing that he tried to paint against him was the fact that, you know, he was getting government contracts with that HVAC business, which he has now put in a blind trust, which some other politicians should take a hint at that. But he has been, he was a model candidate, and there was really nothing for Carl Dean to attack.
You know, he supposedly, according to his spokesman, that Bill Lee and his wife prayed about whether he should run for a full year. So that's how long he thought about it, then decided in April of 2017 to announce, and from then on really basically relied on his personal rapport with people, and we see how he interacts.
Oh, yeah.
He's very comfortable in the room, has a kind of commanding presence,
yes,
and you know, I think it was an example of retail politics at its best. Let's show, if we can, what we're seeing from the feed here of the ceremony. All these governors from the past. There's Honey Alexander, and you see Phil Bredesen there, and his wife.
That was Don Sonquist there as well.
Yeah. So it's it really is the who's who of Tennessee politics there at War Memorial State Auditorium in Nashville this morning. I can still say this morning. We've got 4 minutes. So we're leading up to the swearing in. We've had a preview of future Governor Bill Lee's address, and he's going to echo a lot of familiar themes that you would expect, and it'll be interesting to see how the crowd reacts, I assume, positively.
Well, and you have to do that in an inauguration speech. You have to strike a positive tone, you have to strike a conciliatory tone, you need to talk about what unites us and not divide us. But let's be honest here, Richard, Bill Lee is starting out. He hadn't even gotten into office yet, and he has wrinkled some feathers of people in Memphis and Shelby County with issues over immigration, the so-called sanctuary cities, a law that was passed last year. He is still not on board with expanding Medicaid, even though he appointed someone to health commissioner who supports it. So there are a lot of things about him starting out, and not to mention his opposition to getting rid of the Nathan Bedford Forrest bust out of the state capitol. So there are some things there that a lot of people in West Tennessee are not happy about. But again, today is all about unification.
That's right. It's important to bring that up because it is interesting. He's chosen to go there when there would be times where he didn't necessarily have to.
Right.
And we'll talk about that probably more on the other side. But let's go back to Nashville now as we get ready for the oath of office there with soon-to-be Governor Bill Lee. Chief Justice Bivens is going to be giving
Governor-elect Lee, are you ready to take the oath of office? Yes, I am. Please place your left hand on the Bible, raise your right hand, and repeat after me. I, William Byron Lee.
I, William Byron Lee.
Do solemnly swear.
Do solemnly swear.
That as Governor of the State of Tennessee.
That as Governor of the State of Tennessee.
I will support the Constitution of the State of Tennessee.
I will support the Constitution of the State of Tennessee.
And the Constitution of the United States.
And the Constitution of the United States.
And that I will perform with fidelity.
And I will perform with fidelity.
And faithfully execute.
And faithfully execute.
The duties of the office of Governor.
The duties of the office of Governor.
To which I have been elected.
To which I have been elected.
And which I am about to assume.
And which I am about to assume.
To the best of my skill and ability.
To the best of my skill and ability.
So help me God.
So help me God.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
There you have it. Governor Bill Lee, we can say now.
Right. Always a very chilling moment here. The oath is taken. The crowd is applauding. This is a special moment for him and for the rest of Tennessee.
Well, it's something we do very well on the national level, state level, you name it. The transition of power goes smoothly and without incident.
Absolutely.
Especially when you have a Republican and a Republican.
Exactly. And probably most people in the room are Republicans.
And his wife? Yes. As I said, we've seen some Democrats in the crowd. We know Shelby County Mayor Lee Harris is there, and Mayor Jim Strickland.
Some state legislators.
State lawmakers, right? I'm amazed how they moved this really within a day. It was supposed to be outside at the Legislative Plaza. And they got everybody seated and everybody, and a stage built at least. And
Thank you very much.
all right, here we go.
Thank you.
The band was a little late on the cue there. That's okay. We've been pretty much late all morning.
Yep. Very appropriate too.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you, Lord.
They have a 19-gun salute inside.
No, we didn't get the 19-gun salute today.
In 1796, a man and his young family made their homestead on the banks of the Cumberland River just up the way from here. That was the year that the great state of Tennessee was founded. And 223 years later, and 50 governors later, we stand here on the banks of the Cumberland River, celebrating our history and anticipating our future. Thank you for that welcome and introduction. Thank you so very much. I'm honored to be here with Governor McNally, Speaker Cassada. Thank you. Welcome. Members of the General Assembly, I genuinely look forward to working with you in the days ahead. Former governors, justices of the Supreme Court, members of our congressional delegation, and all fellow Tennesseans who have joined here in the War Memorial Auditorium, where it's warm and dry, and all across the state. Thank you for sharing in this really special moment. I want to make a couple of acknowledgments. I would not be here today if it weren't for God's gift to me, my wife, Maria. Throughout the past 2 years of campaigning, Maria's been constantly by my side. She's been steadfastly committed, steadfastly loved me, and in the process, she has steadfastly fallen in love with the people of Tennessee and has committed to them as well. She will make a remarkable First Lady. Thank you, Maria. I also want to thank my family, who occupy a large section of this, and I want to thank my mother for being here. Ann Lee, who for 4 generations has been the foundation of the Lee family. My children, and their spouses and their families, Jessica and Jacob and Caleb and Sarah Kate. You all have loved me well for many, many years. We have loved each other well through many, many things. But in the last couple of years, you've made great sacrifices. And I'm grateful for that. And your dad loves you even more than ever. I'd also like to take my own opportunity to thank Governor Bill Haslam and his wife, Chrissy, for their tireless service to the state for the past 8 years. Standing here in our state's capital, we see reminders of your administration's success everywhere. Growth and opportunity can be seen on every corner. From education to economic development, you've laid a foundation, a remarkable foundation that we get to build upon. We're the envy of many states, and it's in large part due to your remarkable leadership. And we, all of us in Tennessee, thank you, and Chrissy, and thank you for being our friend. That man that I spoke of that settled his family on the banks of the Cumberland the year that this great state was formed, that man's name was Charles Braxton Lee. And he was my 7th great-grandfather. And we stand here today, beneficiaries not of great governments of the past, but of the lives of the great men and women who have come before us. Men and women who forged difficult lives on the frontier, who formed small towns and eventually larger cities, people who cleared the land and planted crops and built businesses and worked in factories and created industry and created a state, like it says on our seal, a state of commerce and agriculture, a state that now stands as one of the most prosperous in the nation. And it didn't just simply happen. It wasn't inevitable. It happened because of men and women who came before us. Men and women who educated our children in one-room schoolhouses and then built an education system. Men and women who cared for our sick in the frontier and then built clinics and then hospitals and then a health system. Men and women who protected us and built a system of justice and law. Circuit riders who traveled this state and built a community of faith. It happened because of men and women who sacrificed in wars from the Revolutionary War to today. And it happened because of men and women who struggled to overcome injustices and inequalities in our society, from slavery to suffrage to civil rights. And most of all, it happened because of the favor of God Himself. Our weakness on our behalf. And He has blessed us indeed. And as governor of Tennessee, I will daily ask for His wisdom and for His guidance and for His direction. And we will need that wisdom, for in spite of the great favor that He's shown us, in spite of the great blessings that we have great challenges in front of us. Tennesseans, we stand in one of the great states in all of America, but our greatness has never come from what one individual has done. Our greatness has always come from the collective lives and service and commitment and sacrifice of those who have come before us, because of what we have always done as a people in community with each other, in service to our state and to our neighbors. Last year, Maria and I drove back and forth all across this state to every corner of Tennessee. And we found out something. No matter whether you live in the hills of East Tennessee or the fields of West Tennessee, or whether you live in a small town or downtown, people want the same thing: a good job, a good school for their kid, and a safe neighborhood. And it's true. We have good jobs and great prosperity here. We have record low unemployment. We have record low taxes. Companies are moving here. Businesses are building here. We have great prosperity, as I said, on every corner. And yet we have 15 counties in poverty, all rural, all Tennesseans. We have some of the most distressed zip codes in America, right in the heart of our greatest cities. So when we consider our state, we see how fortunate we are, and yet we also see how much we have to do. Not only do Tennesseans want a good job, but Tennesseans want good schools for their kids, and we have made tremendous progress in this state in education, in part due to great education governors that have gone before me. In fact, Tennessee has the highest rate of improvement in educational outcomes of any state in the country. And yet, we're still in the bottom half of states. Now, I believe that education is much more than a test score. It's about preparation of a child for success in life. And a resurgence of vocational and technical and agricultural education and the inclusion of civics and character education combined with reforms will take Tennessee to the top tier of states. And Tennesseans do want good jobs and they do want good schools, but they also want safe neighborhoods. And while most of our communities and our neighborhoods are safe, our violent crime rate is rising in every major city in our state. We can be tough on crime and smart on crime at the same time. And for violent criminals and for traffickers, justice should be swift and it should be certain. But here's the reality. 95% of people sitting in a jail or prison cell in the state of Tennessee are coming out into our communities. And right now, half of them will recommit a crime and go back in the first 3 years. We need to help nonviolent offenders re-enter society, not re-enter prison. I believe that we can do it. I believe that we can create safer neighborhoods, good jobs, better schools all across our state. These are just a few examples of the challenges that we face. And there are many other challenges that we can't ignore either. An opioid epidemic that's ravaging Tennessee. Too few Tennesseans have access to health care that they can afford. Our rural communities are struggling. Yes, these are the challenges of our day, and history will judge us based on how we meet them. As honored as I am to be your next governor, no governor will solve the problems. In fact, no government will solve the greatest problems that we face. Government's not the answer to our challenges. Government's role is to protect our rights, our liberty, and our freedom. And I believe in a limited government that provides unlimited opportunities for we, the people, to address the greatest challenges of our day. The truth is that most of the things that have created the greatness of Tennessee don't have much to do with government at all. Our strength has always come from our people, like those first Tennesseans who came here with hope and who worked together to create this great state. You know, we're famous for our 3 grand divisions of East and West and Middle, and as evidenced by the 3 stars on our flag. But it's important to remember, however, that that circle around those stars represents the unity of our state. And I believe that Tennesseans have much more that unites us than divides us. And I believe that one way that we do unite is by following the commandment to love your neighbor as yourself. In fact, I believe it's a key to American greatness. Our greatness has never come from government compulsion or power. It's always come from our love for each other and our commitment to our fellow citizens and to our neighbors. If we remember that commandment and walk in that spirit, our greatest days will always lie before us. Thank you. So much has changed over the past 223 years, but some things haven't changed at all. Once again, we stand here, Tennesseans, on the banks of the Cumberland, with great challenges and great opportunities, as much in need of the wisdom and favor of God as ever, and with a continued deep commitment to each other. These last few months, I've thought an awful lot about Braxton Lee and about those first Tennesseans. I wonder what they told each other when they had to deal with their struggles. And I think a lot about who they were. They were strong and courageous, and they were faithful, and they were committed, and they were certain. They were Tennesseans. And I've also thought a lot about our descendants, 7 generations from now. What will they say of us? Were we strong and courageous? Were we faithful? Were we committed? Were we certain? Did we come together to meet the challenges that we face with courage and optimism and a belief in each other? If we meet the challenges of this moment, they too will say of us, they were Tennesseans. Thank you for this great honor. May God bless each one of you, and may God bless the great state of Tennessee. Thank you.
The feed was pretty clean for most of the speech, thank heavens, and we got right to it. I mean, they promised it would be about 13 minutes, and that's exactly what it was. Your thoughts on his general themes and what the governor had to say?
Well, let me start with style, Richard. I thought that his style, his approach to this address was outstanding. I mean, we might be looking at a national political figure.
I had the same thought. I'm like,
really?
He's good. He's good.
He is good.
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah.
He knows how to give an address. He knows how to, the cadence of a speech. Mm-hmm. In politics, that means a lot. Mm-hmm. So first of all, the style was fabulous. He struck a lot of important chords there. He talked about education. He talked about what Tennesseans want are good jobs, good schools, and safe neighborhoods. He talked about, he brought up prison and how people coming out of prison, nonviolent offenders should reenter society and not reenter prison.
I love that line, and you know, it's interesting he said that because that's really supposedly where he was inspired to run for governor, and we'll show this interview here probably coming up here in a minute, but was his work in prison reform.
Right.
And he was very inspired by that and how much impact needed to be had there.
Right.
It doesn't like the idea of institutionalized prisons.
Right.
We're looking now, if we can show it, the swearing in of the cabinet. I think I just saw Lang Wiseman, the former Shelby County chairman of the Republican Party here. And also Jennifer Nichols is being sworn in right now. She is a former Shelby County prosecutor with the DA's office, and she's being sworn in as the head of the Department of Children's Services.
I have been appointed, and which I am about to assume, so help me God. Please rise for the benediction, and we will pronounce the founder and president, the Caleb Company, Dr. Don Finto.
There was one other thing, Richard, that struck me about Bill Lee's speech, and it has been part of his entire campaign and really a part of his life. He talked a lot about his faith, and he talked a lot about his faith in God and how he has been blessed as a result of that. That seemed to be genuine expressions there.
Politicians use that a lot.
They do.
But with him, you really do feel that it's real.
Right. It's not just an opportunistic thing with him. It comes through, and it has come through throughout the campaign. So it is very real.
He also talked about education big time. I think we have that quote in which he said, "I believe that education is more than a test score. It's about preparing a child for success in life. a resurgence of vocational, technical, and agricultural education, and the inclusion of civics and character education, combined with reforms, will take Tennessee to the top tier of states. So clearly he sees, even though we've made great progress, and we have, because southern states tend to get a bad rap when it comes to, maybe it's deserved, I don't know, but we don't do very well when it comes to test scores, and he sees that we can do even better.
And of course, we've had so much problem with our testing, our test scores. You mentioned T.N. Reddy a few minutes ago. He is committed, I think, to trying to deal with that issue. He has a new education commissioner that's coming in from Texas. But he's right that we should not just focus only on test scores. We should focus on a broader education opportunity for our students and bring back that civics part in our schools, which is sorely missing.
Oh yeah, and it's not just a Tennessee issue, obviously, but when I talk about this all the time when I'm out and about, 2 out of 3 Americans cannot name all 3 branches of government.
Right.
That's a problem.
Right, right. And a lot of the students I even deal with on the university campus, some of them don't even know who the governor was.
Right.
So we have a problem with that, and I'm glad that he addressed that. One other thing that he mentioned, and there was a line here where he said, government is not the answer to our greatest challenges. Government's role is to protect our rights and our liberty and our freedom, and he believes in limited government. Well, I mean, that's a Republican talking point. Of course, that's what it is. But there is obviously a role for government to play. And I'm sure he was not saying that I'm going to cut back on some government things that certainly we, as citizens, deserve to have from our government, whether it's local, state, or national.
Well, as the ceremony wraps up here, let's take a couple minutes and bring you a one-on-one interview that I did with Bill Lee shortly after election night. In fact, it hadn't even been a week yet, in which he invited me to his home in Franklin, just outside of Nashville, and it was the first such interview since his pretty commanding win. He opened up about everything from President Trump to his plans for Memphis. Let's listen to that interview.
My opponents are fighting over what I've already done as your Tennessee Speaker.
During the most expensive and nasty Republican primary in state history this past summer, Bill Lee refused to run any negative ads and won.
Asking you to join me in supporting Bill Lee for governor.
And he did it again last week.
And the next governor of the state of Tennessee, Bill Lee.
I just knew the way I wanted to run it and assumed the way others might run their campaigns, but we stuck to our plan.
You sure did. I mean, I had to believe that even some of your political consultants at some point made you want to think about going negative.
There were certainly conversations around it and a lot of outside thoughts and input. You know, you will have to do this. That was usually what I heard is, you know, you'll have to do it. You can't be a nice guy all the way through a campaign.
But the plan worked. Lee got at least 70% of the vote in 61 Tennessee counties. And his election night speech once again showed this outsider's unconventional side.
I want them to know, every one of them, that from the bottom of my heart, I care about you and I care about your family. And I'm going to do everything I can for those who didn't vote for me to ultimately make them be proud that I am their governor.
A message that doesn't quite fit these divisive times. Because it sure is a nasty political atmosphere.
It is, but I don't think it has to be. I really don't. I don't think it has to be. I mean, people have real differences, and those are clear, and I understand that, and there's people that there are things that I'll never agree with someone else on, but that doesn't mean that we can't sit down and care for one another and respect each other's opinions and beliefs.
Words that made me wonder.
You are fake news.
Did you ever seek the president's endorsement?
I did not seek his endorsement, no. I got his endorsement after the primary, but I didn't seek his endorsement.
But he did seek and got the endorsement of Shelby County School Superintendent Dorsey Hobson. Another unconventional move during the campaign by this conservative Republican. Does Dorsey Hobson have a role in the Bill Lee administration?
He has a role. We talk. We've become friends, and I have a great deal of respect for his expertise. And I talked to him just yesterday, and in getting thoughts from him, I haven't put my administration together yet, and I haven't started selecting folks. So he and I haven't talked specifically about it.
But you got the feeling they might. Lee is embracing the life changes he's about to make, including his main address. What's it going to be like?
It'll be really different to not live on this farm. I've lived here my entire life, all but just a few years, and grew up here and raised my kids here.
And say goodbye to the $450 million company he built.
You just completely disconnect from your company, and that's exactly what I'll do. And someone else will run it, and other people will operate it, and I will leave that. And again, that's bittersweet, but it's the right thing to do.
Lee says being Tennessee governor is a calling. He'd successfully built a home services company, raised 4 kids, has 5 grandkids. Then 3 years ago, while on a task force for prison sentencing reform, it hit him.
I began to think, what if I could use my life in a bigger way to impact even more people? And that's when I really started seriously thinking about public service.
This governor-elect says to be judged a successful governor 4 years from now, poverty and prison reentry rates must be down. Literacy rates and students in vocational education must be up. He knows he has 4 years.
God bless the great state of Tennessee. Thank you. Thank you.
All right, that was obviously just right out, and there was the speculation with Dorsey Hobson that was running rampant. That didn't end up being the case, although they have quite a relationship apparently in discussing education and where it needs to go and how it needs to be improved. Let me ask you, Otis, as you look, we're winding down our coverage here. His first 100 days, translating to the next 4 years, what do you expect that we're going to see?
Well, I mean, I think he is going to follow through on his plans for some reforms when it comes to prison reentry. He mentioned that in his speech today. He mentioned it in your piece. I think we will see that. I think he is serious about trying to do something about TN Ready. He has brought in a person who has some fairly good experience from Texas to be the education commissioner. I expect him to do that. So I expect him to work on that. But he has talked also about immigration. And that is one where it may cause a little bit of friction between Nashville and Memphis, especially with this law that says you have to keep immigrants who are locked up. You have to keep them a longer period of time in order for the feds to pick them up. That could be an issue that could cause a little tension. I'm looking to see, Richard, if he is going to be, as Bill Haslam was, sort of a mediator between the friction between people in Memphis and Shelby County and the legislature, or is he just going to take a hands-off approach? I'll be watching for that.
You bring up the immigration issue. That has come up again this week because he hadn't even been sworn in, and he mentioned that he wants his legal team to look into Shelby County.
Right.
Specifically mentioning Shelby County and whether it might be violating state law, this new state law that the legislature passed in the last session that frankly is very vague. The county attorney is not going out on a limb by saying it's very vague in terms of enforcement. We'll just see what happens with that.
Well, we will. And the Marlon A. Iverson, the county attorney, has said quite clearly that holding someone longer than you're supposed to, that's a constitutional problem. And the sheriff, Bonner, has said, we notify the Fed, the ICE, when we pick up an undocumented immigrant to come get them. But if they make bond, we have to let them go. Yeah, and so that's an issue that's counter to this legislation that was passed last year. And for Bill Lee to make that one of his first goals or first endeavors is to look into whether Shelby County is violating this law. Again, I think it's setting up a little bit of friction here when it did not need to be going forward, starting out.
Well, it's going to be interesting to follow it because by and large, not to put too much damper on things, it was he really wants to get off things off on a positive start. Right. Has big plans for the state, and you know, it's really in his hands now.
And it is. And again, today was a wonderful day for him. I think it was one wonderful day for the state. He made a really, really good speech. Yeah. And we have a star in the making here, I believe.
We want to thank you for joining us as well. I'm Richard Ransom on behalf of Otis Sanford and myself. I want to thank you for joining us for this special event. Tomorrow morning at 9, be sure to join Otis and me for Local 24 This Week for more insight on the inauguration as well as other news of the week. And a one-on-one interview with Shelby County Sheriff Floyd Bonner. That's Local 24 This Week tomorrow morning at 9. Have a great day, everybody, and thanks again for being here today.